I think the most unique part about this challenge is that we have a wearable device that's in water. One interesting fact that most folks may not know that's kind of surprising is waves, like Bluetooth waves, they don't travel through water. So while the member is in the water, we can't communicate with the watch. It really is an embedded system that's there in the water, moving through the water we're trying to run. And that's really, really challenging. It's challenging to build something like that, and it's challenging to test something like that.
Hi, I'm Eden Fulgo, and you're listening to How It's Tested, a monthly series where we discuss great products, how they're tested, and other stories from the testing community, featuring interviews with tech leaders, founders, testing experts, and creators. How It's Tested is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. For more information, visit heavybit.com. If you're interested in being a guest on this show, or if you would like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter at Team Mobot. That's TEAMMOBOT. Today, we'll be chatting with Adam Oxner and Nick Newell, key engineering leadership team members at MySwimPro, established in 2014 as the #1 fitness app for swimmers. Adam is the co-founder and CTO, while Nick is the VP of engineering. Hey, Nick and Adam, thanks so much for joining the How It's Tested podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
We've been getting to know each other over the last few months of working together with our companies, but I've never actually gotten sort of the full scoop on just like the founding story of MySwimPro and how you guys came to work together as a team, and would love to just learn a little bit more and have our listeners learn a little bit more about MySwimPro and also maybe your backgrounds as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. So I'm Adam Oxner. I'm co-founder and CTO here at MySwimPro. We were incorporated in 2015, but still a small team. I think we have about 14 people on the team right now. But the founding story is, so my co-founder, Ferris Sabati, and I thought there would be a great need for delivering workouts for swimmers to mobile devices. So at the time, there were cycling apps and running apps, but not really a lot out there for swimmers. So we thought it would be pretty fun to build. Honestly, started out with it would be fun to build a product, a software product that, or an app that would help people swim. And MySwimPro's mission is to help people achieve their fitness and performance goals through swimming. And to that end, we have the MySwimPro app. But I'll let Nick introduce himself as well.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nick Newell. I'm the VP of engineering here at MySwimPro. I have been on the team for 18 months. So prior to joining MySwimPro, I was leading engineering teams at another large company for about 17 years, a variety of experience in the telecom world. When I came to MySwimPro, I did not know how to swim for fitness. I could swim for survival swimming, but I could not swim for fitness. And it's a testament to the product. Over the last 18 months, I've gone from not being able to swim 100 meters to being able to swim a mile, which is pretty awesome. And so I'm learning breaststroke and butterfly and everything now, different types of swimming, but it's been a wild ride. And so I lead the engineering, product, and design team here. And so I have a lot of fun stories and thoughts on quality and quality assurance. So I'm excited to be here to chat about that today.
Nick's been crushing it, learning how to swim since joining. So we've seen a lot of progress. We've made YouTube videos about him if you want to look it up, of Nick getting better and better at swimming since he joined. But yeah, it's been great to have everyone on the team swims. So
that's awesome. And Adam, I think I read online that you were a varsity swimmer in college. Is that right?
Yeah, I swam at the University of Michigan. And luckily enough, after swimming basically my whole life, I still love swimming. I know some of my friends got burnt out because, if you do something for 20 or 30 hours a week for 10 or 20 years, you get burnt out. But I still love to swim once or twice a week. I'm not as competitive as I was anymore. I like to swim because I love being in the water, but I love using the MySwimPro app and built it first with myself in mind. And then since people ended up loving it, we've since expanded our mission a lot.
Yeah. I guess since you guys started the company, 5+ years ago now, or more like 8 actually, how has your vision of the platform evolved from, you being a varsity swimmer and designing something for you, an experienced swimmer, to then also now incorporating and thinking about the product from the perspective of Nick, who, you know how to swim for survival, but then how do you design a program or a product interface that makes folks that are less experienced with swimming excited to swim, but then also like reconciling that with folks who've been doing this for 10 or 20 years? Like, how do you make that all happen in the same platform?
Yeah, it's really challenging. We've gone through lots of pivots, and even from like a very high level, we were just offering like basically a workout library at the very beginning, and we weren't charging for it for like the first year at all. And it's since expanded to be much more personalized. So I would say the introduction of our personalized training intervals, which personalizes your workout to you. So when you join our app, you can say what strokes you can swim and what your speed is for each stroke, basically, more or less. And then from there, the app can recommend and tailor all of the workouts right to you. So no matter if you come in and most people can just swim freestyle starting out if they're interested in swimming laps, that's kind of like the base level or front crawl. You can just say, I can only swim freestyle, and then the app will just serve you workouts for freestyle. So it's the personalization is what has helped us expand from writing the workouts for just one demographic or one type of swimmer to be able to adapt to many different types of swimmer. There's still corners that we need to cover, but we are really proud of the progress we've made so far.
I guess like in terms of the MySwimPro platform, I know there's an iOS app and there's also an Apple Watch app. Like, do you guys have an Android platform? Do you guys have a web platform? Like, what are all the sort of different pieces that your engineering team has to oversee?
Yes, so we have an Android app and an iOS app. The iOS app also has an Apple Watch counterpart app. And we have a web platform on a technical level that it mostly services like web transactions, so purchases when people are subscribing to us. Sometimes we drive traffic to the web platform, but in terms of functionality for the end user or members, it's all in the iOS and Android apps. Our premier experience is definitely in the Apple Watch app. So I think we'll get into the Apple Watch stuff a lot more later in this conversation, but those are kind of the areas that our members use.
We also integrate, I'll add on there, with Garmin, integrate well with Garmin, where we can, similar to the Apple Watch experience, almost as good, where we can push personalized workouts to a variety of Garmin watches from our platforms, and you can swim a customized workout on a Garmin watch as well.
That's really interesting. And I guess I'm curious, just thinking about like the changes in technology and in the industry, just the availability of data and syncing from one platform to another. How has that really changed in the last 8 years? Like when you first started the company to like where it is today? Because it does feel like Apple Health has a lot more capabilities than it used to. And how do you kind of listen and follow those trends and those integration opportunities and build that into your company roadmap and your product roadmap?
Yeah, it's a really funny story, actually. So a lot of this actually is driven by waterproof hardware. So when we started in 2014, 2015, there was only like Garmin's into a few hardware device manufacturers that made swim tracking devices. And of those, the capability of developing custom software for, like a third-party developer like us would build, was very limited. So actually, when we started 2015, that's the year that the first Apple Watch came out, which is now called the Apple Watch Series 0, kind of. That's what people call it. It wasn't billed as waterproof. There was no swim tracking, but we have 2 hackathons a year internally, just to drive innovation and have fun kind of with the platform. And so I think this was our first hackathon we had, I built a Apple Watch app for MySwimPro. It did basically the main things that it does now. It walks you through the workout, taps your wrist when you need to push off the wall, everything like that, shows you the time so you don't need a clock. And I've just built it internally. And then we're like, well, we can't ship this because there's no swim tracking. It's not waterproof. And then we just shelved it. And we said, that was fun. Maybe one day we'll get to build something like that. And then in 2016, the Apple Watch Series 2 came out. It was waterproof, 50-meter waterproof. And Apple which was huge for us, Apple shipped it with swim tracking. So building a swim tracking system is no small feat. And in fact, we rely on the hardware right now. We rely on the hardware manufacturers to do the swim tracking for us. But then, so when the Series 2 came out, that was waterproof, I found that old code, that old branch that was really, really from like a year ago, basically, pulled it back up, and we built out the first version of MySwimPro on the Apple Watch. So it was ready. I think it was just like 2 weeks after the Series 2 came out, and we were lucky enough to be selected by Apple as the Apple Watch App of the Year in 2016, which was really cool. So in terms of swimming technology trends, I think a lot of it has been driven by hardware. So since then, all the Apple Watches developed since then have been waterproof. Garmin has opened up their developer platform to allow us to push workouts there and read from them. But again, I think, and there's even more swim-proof hardware coming on the market every year, actually. So it's very cool.
Interesting. I guess from like a data accuracy perspective, I don't know how much you guys are balancing testing all of the different series something watches over the years. Like, do you feel like the technology is getting more accurate? How does that kind of impact your product?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because, so like I said, we're not building the actual measurement of like laps or strokes per lap or whatever. We rely on Garmin and Apple mainly for these functions, and they have been getting better. Part of it is they retrain their machine learning models, I think, every once in a while, and also the sensors are getting more accurate in hardware. But it's getting better. I think Nick will agree with me that we would like it to be more accurate, but we understand it's a very difficult task. So we're not the ones building the lap tracking, and there's a reason for that, and it's very difficult. So we're grateful for the progress that has been made so far.
Yeah, definitely a challenge. We, for example, we just launched a feature called the test set, where you're trying to go as fast as you can for 100 meters. And timing is everything for swimmers, especially when you get to a level of competitive swimming. So even 100th of a second or 1,000th of a second really matters. So we do hear from a lot of our members that it is great, but we wish it could be even greater because we got to get down to the 100th or 1,000th of a second, because that does matter when you hit the wall and you're trying to get your best time on a 100-meter swim. So.
Sounds like it's probably a matter of time over the next 5 to 10 years as things continue to progress, and it only benefits your platform, and you are then presented with this opportunity to integrate with all these great providers.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems to be getting better every year. Even at WatchOS 9 that came out last year added kick detection for swimmers, which is when your arm's not even moving. It can detect when you're using a kickboard which is just when you use your legs to move through the water, which has been a great addition for us and our members. Really grateful for this addition. But yeah, we're making great progress in this space.
That's awesome. Nick, I'm curious, like with your background having, led different engineering teams, like how does having this hardware element that you kind of have to respond to, but also develop for, how has that sort of changed, or the way that you've led engineering teams and worked with engineers, or how has that contrasted with other teams or companies you've been part of?
Yeah, good question. So it's a big challenge. There's no doubt about it. I've worked with embedded systems that are out in people's homes, but I think the most unique part about this challenge is that we have a wearable device. So that's one thing that's really challenging, but this thing is in water. We have a wearable device that's in water. One interesting fact that most folks may not know that's kind of surprising, was surprising to me when I joined the company, is we still can't get waves like Bluetooth waves. They don't travel through water. So while the member is in the water, we can't communicate with the watch. It really is an embedded system that's there in the water, moving through the water we're trying to run. And that's really, really challenging. It's challenging to build something like that. But then as we worked with you, Eden, it's challenging to test something like that. And so it really, coming here to MySwimPro, even though I've had 17 years experience testing other things in the past, and even those being embedded systems, it's truly a unique challenge. And so, like you said, the physicality of the devices going forward, they're on your wrists, they're everywhere on your body, they're moving quickly. It really is a fun time to be in engineering to try and solve some of these problems. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this out in the wild. I mean, we're not only in pools, but we have these out in the ocean and lakes and rivers, and it's fun to have such challenges to try and solve these problems. It's really neat.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your day-to-day, week-to-week engineering team processes. Like, is the iOS app and the Android app and your backend and the Apple Watch app, are they all on the same release schedule? How is your team structured? Like, are different engineers like full stack? Like, curious to hear a bit more about the composition of the team.
Yeah, how about I'll talk a little bit about the team, and then I'll let Adam talk a little bit about the release structure. So we're a relatively traditional agile software development team. So we have a regular daily stand-up. We have sprint planning every 2 weeks. We have a sprint demo every 2 weeks. We have backlog refinement. We have retro. So we have those usual practices. We are a completely remote team. Adam's calling in from New York City right now. I'm calling in from Denver, Colorado. Like, we are completely remote. So our developers are around the world, actually. We have some that are on other parts of the world. So every day we have a daily stand-up. We are over communicating both in Slack and together as a team to figure out what are the things that we need to do, and just really working well together. I'm very grateful for the team. We have a really awesome team culture. Everybody is a swimmer. Even if you just started when you came to the company, everybody's a swimmer. And so we work really well together to make sure the client is integrating well with the back end, and we're sharing data. We're, of course, using data analytics to make sure that we're seeing the right thing out there in the field, and working well together there. So yeah, team-wise, team structure-wise, how we're approaching things is over communication, the traditional agile software practices of a biweekly sprint and releasing on that cadence. And that really keeps us on the same page and focused and aligned. I'll let Adam kind of talk about under the hood, what's happening from a software perspective.
So our three main platforms that we release regularly to are iOS, Android, and our backend. So as I think most software teams aim for, is continuous integration and continuous deployment. Though with iOS and Android apps, you can't quite like ship as soon as things get merged. So for iOS and Android, we have a weekly release cadence, which we're pretty proud of as a team, where all of the work basically that gets done through the 1 week gets cut into a beta, and then that goes out to our beta testers. You can sign up to be a beta tester at myswimpro.com/beta. And and then the beta testers get that release for a week, and we can get analytics and feedback on that from our beta testers as well as our internal team. So we do also have nightly builds. So basically, Nick swims almost every day. I swim like once or twice a week. But throughout the week, the team members will swim on the latest code and provide feedback as well, and point out any defects that might appear. So it's a weekly release cadence for iOS and Android with a 1 week beta soak period. And then on the back end, we're slowly creeping our way through to CI/CD. And right now we release every Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And we have there's a development, staging, and production server on those as well. That, like, for example, our beta apps point to the staging before it gets to our production servers.
So does actual swimming happen with, like, for example, on the iOS app, test flight builds, or are you guys sometimes going even earlier and there could be like, I don't know, do you swim off the develop branch?
Well, I do sometimes. So I'm still in the code every day. So like I said, we have alpha builds that go out. Those go out on test flight. And that's like what most of the internal team swims with, is whatever the last nightly build is on test flight will auto update overnight. And then Nick wakes up at 4 a.m. to go for a swim or whatever. He likes to go very early. But sometimes there are riskier fixes or changes that we do test before even merging into the nightly build, or like experimental code that I like to just load onto the watch and go test.
Yeah, it's fun. I mentioned earlier we have 1 or 2 developers that are overseas in Europe. And so we'll be talking about a feature during the day here in Denver time. That feature will get developed that night in Europe while I'm sleeping. And I'll get up at 4:30 a.m., put on my watch, and it'll be on my watch for me ready to swim the next morning, like right on the alpha build there. And I'm giving feedback by 6 a.m. so that the later in the day, some of the folks here in the US can even solve some of the issues that we have there. So yeah, very fast, continuous integration, continuous deployment. We have opportunities for improvement there, no doubt, but certainly very proud of what Adam has built and what we've been able to maintain from a CI/CD perspective, for sure.
That's really interesting. How do you know, because I feel like as a part of normal regression testing for an app, you kind of can test the functionality and, an app crashed and like really obvious stuff, you can sort of pick up. But like, how do you know while you're swimming that, the product is performing as expected? And what kinds of feedback do you get from your testing while daily swimming, or even the beta testers? Like, are you looking at actual metrics and comparing, since you guys aren't actually managing the actual data collection, are you looking at sort of the integration of the data that comes in and how it compares to a prior release? Like, how do you actually know that it's working correctly?
I'll jump in here, and then Adam, you can add in there a variety of things. So yes, we're there in the water, looking at our watch. It's giving us the data about our swim, and it's telling you you've gone 25 meters, you've gone 50 meters, you've gone 75 meters. It's giving you the time. It's instructing you on how to do your guided workout. Most of the time, that's going really well. There are some times where while I'm in the water, I'm catching a defect. And there have been multiple times where I've actually paused my workout, jumped out of the water, grabbed my camera, recorded the thing that I was seeing on my watch, sent it over Slack to our team, and then got back in the water and finished swimming my workout. So yeah, that has happened on multiple occasions when I was on Alpha. So yes, while in the water, we're getting that. Then after you get out of the water, so now we're moving into the locker room. Now I'm looking on my phone, so I can see all of the data for the processed workout on my phone and see what my splits are and my lap times and how all that compares. And as a swimmer, you start to get a good feel for what your times actually are in your head. So then you can compare it against what you're seeing on the watch and on the phone. And then, of course, when we get back here to the office, our home office, then you can look at more data that has come in for the workout in the back end, but also through our data analytics platforms like Amplitude, and see what else is coming in there on properties that have changed and events that fired and all that good stuff. So there are kind of multiple levels, weekly or even daily, that we're swimming as a team when we're looking at the data. And then all of that is kind of captured within the week. Obviously, as you know, Eden, we are also working with your team, partnering with Mobot to run a test suite every single week that is taking a different angle on that. That is saying, hey, last week when I ran this test, I saw this screen on the Apple Watch. This week, when I run this test, I am seeing this screen on the Apple Watch. What's going on? Because with all of this huffing and puffing and panting in the water when I'm tired, sometimes we miss things. So that's why we have Mobot to catch those things on a little bit more disciplined basis. Every week we're testing beta that way as well. So that's kind of my perspective. Adam, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that.
I'll add that the most frustrating thing when you're using a product during a workout is for it to fail right in the middle when you're like working so hard, you're out of breath, there's not a lot of blood in your brain, and then like things go wrong. And we experience that probably as an internal team, hopefully more than our everybody else does that uses our product, because we are using riskier builds before they get out to production. So I've been part in many swims where my watch will just like stop the workout and I just am left floating in the pool, figuring out what to do. So we feel the pain of our members do in the pool as well. And we know how difficult that can be. And we find that really helps us prioritize the defects that we're seeing too. So besides just catching them, is prioritizing them and feeling empathy for our members. And because we're dogfooding our own product, that I think really shows in how our first priority is making sure you're getting through the workout, and then all the rest of the stuff can come later.
Yeah. You guys touched on like CI/CD, you have Agile, you run a lot of best practices that a lot of other engineering teams are doing. But what are sort of parts of DevOps methodology or engineering best practices that you've had to specifically adapt or change or throw out because it wouldn't apply to the kind of product that you're developing that has all of these real world complexities?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. In general, kind of the biggest challenge we have that others may not have this challenge because they're not a wearable device that's in the water is just automated testing on the platform on a simulation. So you mentioned this earlier, Eden, about how physical the device is. Believe it or not, there's not a ton of advancement in quality assurance in a wearable device, especially when it's in the water and you can't communicate with it. So that's actually the biggest reason why we partnered with Mobot, was because there aren't a lot of options out there to be able to test a wearable device. Mobot is one great option, using actual robots to test a watch. And so some of the things that you could do where you could release, like you hear about Netflix and these other big engineering success stories that are releasing every minute, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, we can't have enough automated testing to do that. We just can't. We have to insert manual testing into it. As Adam and I have spoken, our team, literally our team, doing alpha testing in the water every day, every week. We have a beta community that's testing on a 1 week soak period that Adam mentioned, that's happening for a week. We have mobot testing. It has to be a balance for us between automation and manual testing. And there will always be that balance until the robots get way more advanced, where we can literally have them swimming in the water and they're waterproof. The whole robot's waterproof. So because of that, like Adam and I love to go fast. I love to go fast. Adam loves to go really fast. And we're kind of blocked a little bit by our ability to do automated testing for everything. So we have a good balance of automated and manual testing. I would say that kind of prevents us from doing the best practices of everything of DevOps when you read the stories of DevOps and CI/CD out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest difference is the Apple Watch or the device connectivity. So it makes it really hard to move fast when you're trying to test and even simulate like connection loss and stuff. I think the industry has some ways to go on tooling, which is where Mobot really helps us out.
Do you guys have unit tests that you write that are more maybe for like API level testing or sort of code level tests that are also running on every PR pull request before it actually gets put into the mobile builds?
Yeah, exactly. So every pull request that gets open, there's a suite of tests that run against it. We do have unit tests running, and then we have API tests on our backend as well that tests so it deploys to a dev server and hits those before promoting it to staging, before promoting it to production every week, or every day really. So yeah, it does start with the unit testing in the code and propagates through there. And I guess at the end of the line, the people testing in the pool is probably the most important part for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that Mobot gets to be a part of this journey in creating this product. It's very unique. I think there's a lot of really interesting features that you guys have specifically for swimmers, and it solves a very important use case. You're right. There's so many of these other apps out there that do like jogging or biking or running, but like there hasn't been enough visibility and accessibility for actual swimming tools like this. So it's been a privilege to just see how much the product has evolved over the last few months that we've been working together. Looking back through all of these advancements that we talked about, you talked about kick detection, you talked about just like more accurate timing. Do you feel like the pace of the hardware that's being developed by these other companies, whether it's Garmin or Apple, have they basically kind of been, what you expected these trends to be like? And I'm curious, like, what features are on your wish list for the next 3 to 5 years that you hope will be developed that you can then integrate with?
Yeah, I think for my part, I've seen the hardware come a long way. So in fact, I've been impressed by the hardware itself and how quickly it's been moving. I don't know how to get around this challenge, but so most screens are capacitive touch screens. And if you try to touch your phone screen when your finger's wet, it doesn't work very well. So imagine Apple Watch has a capacitive touch screen. So when you're in the pool, you can't use the screen at all. It just doesn't work. So Apple Watch has a feature called water lock, which does a great job for what it does, but we would love a better way to interact with the screen. There's buttons. So, for example, Garmin has tons of buttons. Apple Watch just added the action button on the Apple Watch Ultra, which has been fun to develop for. So we would love more ways to interact with a device when you're in the water. And like Nick said, though, we're limited by physics because Bluetooth waves don't travel more than an inch underwater, I think it is. And Wi-Fi only goes like a foot, maybe, I think, or maybe 2 feet. So we are limited by physics. I think what I would like to see a quicker pace of innovation on is probably the software in swim detection. This is very selfish for us. So obviously we're very focused on lap detection for swimmers, and there's a lot of other types of things that this hardware needs to be able to do. But we would love more accuracy for lap detection. Like one of the metrics we track is like percent of lap coverage, like how many laps did the Garmin tell us that person swam versus how many laps did the person tell us that they swam, and comparing those. We would love to get that closer to 100%. And like Nick said, seconds count for swimmers or less than a second, so more accuracy there. I'm sure we will see continuing involvement in the the models that are tracking or doing the lap detection for swimming.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, and I'm sure you guys have analytics about this or you've done some product and UX research, but I would assume that like most of the time, the athletes that are using your product, like viewing the workouts, Nick, you were saying earlier, like you do that afterwards when you're in the locker room and you're scrolling through and making sure everything's, kind of like as you expected. But the actual interaction with the watch is more just like starting, stopping, pausing the workouts. It's not like people are doing a full analysis or like really intensive UX stuff on the actual watch itself. Is that right?
Mostly right, but you might be surprised how much a swimmer is looking at the watch and looking at some of the metrics during the swim. So obviously, probably not while they're in the middle of a stroke, but we hear from a lot of members that the moment they touch the wall, they know exactly the time that they see on their watch. The moment they touch it, it's like I'm reaching out with my right hand. And I did that this morning. I swam a 100-meter breaststroke, which I've only done one other time, and I was trying to get a best time. So the moment I hit the wall, I looked at my watch and it said 1:52. Well, it wasn't then until about 10 minutes later when I got into the locker room where I opened up my phone, I looked at it, and it was exactly 1:52. But I knew in my mind it was 1:52 because I saw it on my watch. So you might be surprised how many swimmers are looking at their watch more often during a workout to see some of the metrics that are in there because that's very important to them. The timing is very important to them.
And we even, there's competing forces for this. So we have people saying, I want more information when I'm swimming on the screen. And then other people saying, and sometimes the same people saying, I can't read the screen. The text is too small because the wearable device has such a small screen out of necessity. So it's a balance of providing the most relevant information at the right time, which we're always trying to work on.
It's fascinating because I remember, like the Series 2 or Series 3, you would get like a small 36-inch watch face, but now they have like the 42 and they're also, I mean, it's also similar with like phone screens have also gotten bigger too, but then there's this constraint of like, it can't go that much bigger than your wrist. So
yeah, exactly.
It's a real design challenge on the watch for sure to figure out what is the best, most important information to be putting on the screen at any given time because it's very limited.
Yeah. I realized that we actually didn't really have a chance to even talk about like your UX and your design process or the other teams that your engineering team interfaces with. I know we're probably running low on time, but I'd love to just hear a little bit more about that if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. Yeah. So we call our team EPD, Engineering, Product and Design. We're all on one team. The whole company is a small company, but we're all on one team. We have a full-time designer, Gisela, that is a member of the engineering team and a part of every single thing we do, member of the team. So we are design first. Everything we do, we design up front. We spend time on design. We iterate design. We talk about it. We review it before we ever touch the code and get in there and do any code on it. So design is a very big part of our experience. We went through an entire redesign on the phone app it's been about a year ago. That was transformational for us to be able to bring a different experience to the member. And we're always thinking about what is the member experience. We just recently, in the last few months, brought a bunch more communication to the member, thinking about it as a user experience, and communication is a part of that, and really trying to make this holistic experience for our members. So design in terms of like user interface, but also user experience design. What is the full experience that you get? So I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I should have said that earlier when I was talking about the team makeup and how our team operates. Everything is done as a design first ahead of time. And we have the benefit, the luxury of having an amazing designer that gets things done so quickly, so high quality that we can discuss that as a team before we ever waste time in the code. So very thankful for that.
I'll follow up and brag on Gisela, our designer, a little bit more. So she also swam in college and she was an international swimmer, which is really important for having, she swam in international competition. So it's really important for having good context on what works and what doesn't work for swim workouts. And I'll add one more repeat the complication of testing in the pool for design. So something that you think might be a good idea when you're sitting at your desk and you get to the pool and you're swimming, you're like, wow, that text is way too small, or wow, I thought that text would be motivational, but actually it just makes me want to swim slower. Or, like, wow, it would be really helpful if this haptic was like when it taps you on the wrist, if it was stronger or shorter or longer, or this thing is distracting. And you don't really know until you're in the thick of a tough workout and you have like 1 second or less to look at your watch. And that makes a huge difference. So again, back to the manual testing in the pool, it means a lot to our team.
It's really refreshing to just hear about the importance in this conversation, talking with you guys, the importance of like just the human perspective. Because I feel like sometimes I have all these conversations now where, oh yeah, CI/CD, A/B test everything, deploy and just like try it out. And if the experiment fails, we'll swap it out. But the intentionality that you guys take to like making sure that this is a good experience, because it's different, right? The stakes in some ways are higher, right? You have to make sure the MySwimPro users are having a great experience in the pool, and it's not always that simple. And there's all these other new and exciting constraints. And I'm really excited to kind of see how the industry continues to evolve. And our team at Mobot is watching this as well, since we'll need to be prepared to support those kinds of engineering teams.
We're both engineers, so hopefully it means a little extra for us to talk about the balance between human and technology, because by nature, we're going to err on technology, but hopefully it really demonstrates the importance of that balance. Hearing a couple of geeks and engineering nerds talk about the importance of human interaction that's happening in quality assurance, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you for making the time to talk about MySwimPro and your engineering team and product and design processes today. It was really awesome to get to deep dive on that, and I hope our listeners learned a lot about your company as well.
Great. Thanks for having us, Eden. It was a lot of fun.
That's all we have time for today. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, or if you'd like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter at Team Mobot. That's TEAMMOBOT. This show is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com.